Do you want to invest money but are always concerned about losing it? Do you ever think, if I invest, I could lose money, but if I don't invest, I'll be stuck on this hamster wheel forever? How can you invest and not gamble with your family's future? In this video, I will explain why index funds always win over the long term. Watch to the end to see how James and George found out the difference between individual stocks and index funds. If you want to build wealth, this is one of the most important lessons to save you a whole lot of grief. This is Growth Guide, your simple guide to growing your wealth. The Godfather Warren Buffett has two simple rules when investing. Rule 1, don't lose money. Rule 2, never forget Rule 1. This doesn't mean save every penny. It's actually to do with upsides and downsides in investing. Quick pop quiz. If you start with $100 and lose 50%, how much gain would you need to get back to $100? You may be tempted to think, well, if I lost 50%, then if I gain 50%, things even out. No sir, let's do the math. Start at $100. Now, losing 50% brings you down to $50. A 50% gain on $50 is only a $25 gain, getting you to only $75. The answer is you will need a 100% gain to get back to $100. So starting with $100, you lose 50%, so you're down to $50. You need another $50 to get to $100 again, which is a 100% gain. It's not just about the percentages, it's about the dollar value it multiplies to. That's why the Godfather says, Rule 1, don't lose money. Rule 2, never forget Rule 1. Because when you lose money, it's much harder to get back. Now you may think, what does this have to do with index funds? To understand index funds, we need to discuss the stock market. The stock market is like an actual marketplace. Imagine you are in a farmer's market. Farmers every week come together to this one place where they sell their produce to the visitors of the market. The market is organized in stalls, so every farmer has a place to sell their produce. Let's just be frank. As much as everyone is friendly and gets along, all the farmers in the market are in competition with each other because the people who come to shop have only so many dollars to spend. There is a finite amount of money to be spent in the market, and typically there will be multiple farmers selling the same produce. When you are buying a stock, what you are doing is buying into one of the stalls in the market. So if stall does well, your share of that stall will perform well. But if the stall does poorly, so will your share of it. You own a part of that stall. The likelihood is that there will be a handful of stalls that perform exceptionally well. But seasons change, produce changes, and what people want to buy changes. So a stall may perform well in spring, but in winter performs awfully. Of course, you can always sell your stock in the stall at the end of a season and pick another for the new season. But good luck always being right. Again, it's not about the gains, it's all about minimizing loss over time. An index fund is a collection of the best performing stalls in the market. So when you buy a share of the index fund, you are buying the best performing stalls. From now, let's call this index fund the Farmers Market Index. Because Farmers Market Index is a collection of stalls, some will do well, some may not perform well. So the outcome is that typically things even out, and the Farmers Market Index will typically only make modest gains. But the main thing is that it protects us from the heavy losses. This doesn't mean that the Farmers Market Index will never lose money, but since it is an index of the top performing stalls, in the event that the Farmers Market Index loses money, everybody is losing money. For example, in a season with no rain and an absolute drought, the whole farmers market will lose money. But these events are rare and don't happen often, like recessions. James and George work together and have been visiting a farmers market weekly to get their produce. They started going to the farmers market this spring as part of their health kick after putting on some weight over winter. One day, James and George are walking in the market and notice that some stalls are busier than others. George notices at the information booth that you could buy shares in the stalls. They both inquired about how the shares worked at the booth. The attendant explained, it's really easy. You can buy shares in individual stalls, or we also have the Farmers Market Index, which is an index of the top performing stalls. They took a pamphlet and continued to walk around the farmers market. George made a note of a stall that was really busy and said to James, "I think that I'll buy into this stall. They look really busy. They must be doing well." James asked George, "What do you think about the farmers market index?" George replied, "Yes, some of the stalls look busy, some are just average." They circled the market, then returned to the information booth. George asked, "Do you have information on how the stalls have performed this season?" The attendant showed them a chart with their performance. George noticed that a stall named Fruit and Veg Co. has increased in value 30% since the start of the season. James had a look at Farmers Market Index and noticed it performed a modest 10%. George bought $100 worth of shares in Fruit and Veg Co. George thought, well, they're obviously the best performer and most likely to do well in all seasons. James knew that seasons change and decided to hedge his $100 with the Farmers Market Index. He thought, well, some will do well and some not so well. At least I'll still probably be up in the long run. After spring ended, so did their trips to the farmers market. James and George fell off their health kick over the festive season. A year passed, and at the end of winter, they both decided to get back into their health routine and started to visit the farmers market again. Whilst walking in the market, James noticed the information booth and remembered, "Hey, didn't we buy shares last year?" George's face lit up with excitement. "Yeah, we did." They walked to the information booth and checked in on their shares. The attendant gave them their share performance for the year. George checked the seasonal reports of Fruit and Veg Co. Last spring, it did 30%, in summer, 20%, in fall, minus 10%, and in the winter, just past minus 10%, growing his $100 investment to $126.36. James checked the seasonal reports of Farmers Market Index. Last spring, it did 10%, in summer 10%, in fall 5%, and in the winter just past 5%, growing his investment to $133.40. George was confused. He said to James, scratching his head, "I had a 30% gain, then another 20%, lost 10%, then lost a further 10%. How is that any different to you gaining 10%, 10%, 5%, and another 5%? Didn't we both just net 30% gain? How come you made $7 more than me?" James explained that it's not just about the percentages we see, it's about the dollar value it multiplies to, and why losing money makes it really hard to get back. It's much better chasing modest gains than sailing the choppy waters of ups and downs. That's why index funds always win over time. They diversify their bets across multiple top performers, mitigating the risk of losses. Yes, it's less exciting and boring to see modest gains, but over the long run, they typically always win. Growing your wealth is a marathon, not a sprint. This makes it even more risky to expose yourself to any losses. You'll be stuck on the hamster wheel, chasing your tail trying to gain back losses. And if in the long run you make more money anyways by hedging your money with boring index funds, who cares about excitement? You made more money. The Godfather's advice to his own wife when he passes is, put your money into an index fund. If you find these resources of value, then hit the subscribe button and leave a comment below. Remember the 2 rules. Don't lose money, and don't forget rule 1. Hit the subscribe button and view the next video and get more simple guides to grow your wealth.